ESG is a set of criteria used to measure companies in comparison to their peers on environmental, social, and governance issues. It's a qualitative assessment that offers investors a way to evaluate a company beyond its financial performance. Environmental measures how sustainable a company's operations are. Social evaluates an organization's workforce, supply chain, and community engagement. And governance addresses its structure and transparency. Reporting frameworks gather ESG data from a company's publicly available resources to create a performance profile that is shared with investors who integrate this data into their investment analysis. At SL Green, we are responsible for verifying this data to ensure our ESG profile is accurate by the time it reaches investors. With the growth of socially responsible investing, companies that are transparent and actively engage in voluntary reporting are often the highest performers in their peer set.
At SL Green, ESG is integrated throughout our business. There has been a growing awareness of ESG among our tenants, so we provide them with annual building performance data across energy, water, and waste to help them stay on track with their own corporate sustainability goals. Recently, our JV partners have taken a vested interest in SL Green's ESG performance. For instance, Prudential requests monthly sustainability reports. We also submit annual ESG questionnaires for CPP and Allianz, which provide our partners with critical building data points and insight into our corporate social responsibility platform. The last piece of the puzzle is ensuring our supply chain is aligned with our environmental, social, and ethical standards by including ESG clauses in our vendor contracts.
At SL Green, we strive for excellence, and ESG is no exception. Since the release of our company's first sustainability report in 2013, we've invested resources into transforming our program while increasing our transparency into company operations. We've seen the fruit of our labor in the most recently published ESG scores. This matrix shows the leading reporting frameworks across the top and our industry peers on the left. SL Green leads the pack in Bloomberg, Thomson Reuters, CDP, and Sustainalytics. This year, we also achieved a GRESB Green Star designation with a score 40% higher than the average first-time responder. We were listed in S&P's newest ESG indexes, and we were the #1 scoring office REIT for ESG disclosures on the Bloomberg World Index. This recognition is the result of a deliberate strategy, which is outlined in our newly released 2019 sustainability report.
Environmental is only one part of the formula for a successful ESG program. But in New York, it has been at the forefront of city and state politics. Recent regulation impacts how we build, operate, and occupy our properties. We recognize that environmental policy is essential for a sustainable New York, and we support legislation that is logical, cost-effective, and productive. In fact, we agree with most of the city and state initiatives. But some of these bills are problematic, so it's essential that politicians strike a reasonable balance and align their positions. Since the passing of New York City and New York State's climate legislation, JV partners, investors, and even government officials have all been leaning on SL Green's sustainability team to weigh in on the legislation's impact to real estate owners. We are actively engaged through every channel to ensure climate legislation is technically feasible and does not compromise the economic vitality of New York.
At the city level, the Climate Mobilization Act is part of the mayor's One NYC plan, designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050. The centerpiece of the legislation is Local Law 97, which goes into effect in 2024 and sets carbon caps for buildings greater than 25,000 square feet across 3 compliance periods. The bill is designed to target New York City buildings with the highest emissions during the first compliance period, starting in 2024. The caps become much more stringent in 2030, where 75% of New York City buildings subject to this legislation are projected to incur fines for non-compliance. The carbon caps for 2030 and beyond are published under the legislation, but haven't been ratified yet, so New York City is appointing an advisory board that will be responsible for finalizing the metrics and defining alternative compliance pathways. So on the heels of Local Law 97, New York State passed the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act.
The state's goal is similar to the city's, but rather than regulating individual buildings, they're committing to a 100% carbon-free grid by 2040. The state must replace 20,000 megawatts of conventional energy sources with renewables. If the state successfully develops a green grid, then building emissions in New York City will be substantially reduced, resulting in lower emissions at our properties.
But Without knowing the likelihood of the state achieving its goal, we evaluated the SL Green portfolio to understand the financial impact of Local Law 97 as the legislation is currently written. Thanks to our efficient building operations and historical capital investments, there is no material impact on our portfolio in the first compliance period. We continuously deploy cutting-edge technologies at our buildings and proactively look for ways to optimize energy performance to reduce emissions.
We don't simply respond to legislation. We execute 5- and 10-year capital plans, which ensure we are future-proofed against the changing real estate landscape in New York City.
Today, no organization is more committed to building an environmentally and socially sustainable legacy for New York City. We will continue to uphold our reputation as a responsible corporate citizen and keep ESG at the forefront of our business strategy.